Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Everything after yourselves. We've got another episode of Mike Unplugged, where we do these special edition episodes of stuff relevant to you. We're out here revolutionising, so to say, the student and graduate experience. We brought on a familiar face. This is Parmis. If you missed the episode, the link will be on one of the corners of YouTube. Let's start off with if people didn't watch your previous episode, could they know who you are, what you do, and what you've been up to since we last spoke? Because I think the last time we spoke, I think it was early last year. I think.
Yeah.
Could we know a bit more?
Yeah. So my name is Parmis Vafapour. Tomorrow I'll find out if I'm a 5-year, so I'm a final year medical student at Barts in the London Medical School. When we last met, I was the president of Women in Healthcare Society at Barts. Now things have definitely changed. I'll be going into next year being their alumni officer, which kind of is a sign of the times, I guess. Just preparing to make sure the connections are still there when we leave. Still medical student, 8 months to go. And I'm currently working on different projects that kind of were inspired from the work we did within Women in Healthcare, just to ensure that the student body experience and the curriculum in itself is inclusive of all intersectionalities of identity. So, lots happens.
I've seen on LinkedIn and on Instagram, it's incredible work that you're doing. So you should be, definitely be proud of yourself. Let's go into this is like a ad-lib episode, because we both realized we didn't actually fly this out. We're going to take this as we go along. Let's start off with, the network that you said that you've established. Could we know a bit more about that?
Yes, so we started a group called the Empowerment Project. So it started off as myself and my friend Rida, who kind of noticed that as a result of one of our events that we don't actually talk a lot about what happened for women in the healthcare setting. So situations from tensions around maternity leave all the way to having to breast pump in a toilet while you're on shift. So a lack of space, a lack of equity, of opportunities, that sort of stuff were talked about from our faculty members at the society event. Rida reached out to myself and one of my colleagues to say that this is not okay, that we're not speaking about this to students. Students should know what they're getting themselves into. It's not all fairies and rainbows. There is stuff that we need to look out for. And Rida and I sat down one day and thought about the different aspects of the student experience that were lacking in terms of empowering. Because when you have the undergraduate medical degree, you have 18-year-olds coming straight from school who've never worked a day in their life. They don't know what the professional environment is like. They don't know how to communicate with people who are seen as elders or who are known as adults in these environments. Whereas graduates or other people who aren't coming in from that 17 to 18 to 19 transition would know and have that experience. And I think it's very naive for academics and clinicians to have that expectation of children, essentially, to come in and know how to hold their ground in a professional environment. So we set up a 3-step plan. I love calling it a 3-step plan. It's so simple but effective. The first step is active bystander training. So we've implemented mandatory active bystander training for our first years currently. So they have a small group session with their tutors and they discuss 3 real scenarios that we've adapted. They're actually scenarios Rida and I experienced ourselves. And they're able to discuss the tensions within them. So one is query sexual harassment. Another one is homophobia. And the third one, I think, is to do with being forced to translate in a language because you're the only person who can speak that language in that moment, but not feeling competent, which is also a tension in itself when you're on placement. So with that, the first year students get the opportunity to actually openly discuss with a group that they've known for a good couple of months at that point, what they would do based on the framework of the 5 Ds of active bystander training. From my understanding, is delegate, direct, and 3 others. Those are my 2 favorite ones. Delegate, deflect, directs. There's 5 main ones, and based on those, we can allow the students to kind of think what they would do in those scenarios. That's been quite good. I think in the 2 years we've done this now completely, it's coming on to 3, we have provided this training for over 900 students now. So it's become as important to our university as stuff like basic life support, training about visual impairment and hearing impairment as well. So it's something that's now a part of our curriculum, and we're working to develop it further into something like an online module that's integrated throughout the student's course and other parts. So it's not just parallel to our curriculum, it is part of its core nature. The second step is a lecture we do to the second years about the gender data gap. So one of our advisors, we like to call her, she asked us to read a book called The Invisible Woman. I think it's by Perez. She's a funny woman, but her book is very good. And I think both of us read it, especially 2 chapters on the drugs don't work and Yentl syndrome, talking about literally the drugs are not made for women, and Yentl syndrome being women having to do a little bit more in order for the medical institution to listen. And that infuriated us. So we said, why aren't students taught about this? There are other aspects such as atypical cardiac symptoms. So what that means is if you don't have a heart attack, that is a crushing chest pain that radiates to your neck, and you don't look like an old white man on Google Images that's leaning forward like this, you come under atypical. Statistics show that women don't often present with heart attacks in that sense. They present with upper stomach pain and a racing heartbeat, something that people usually associate with anxiety and panic attacks. And a lot of heart attacks are missed as a result of that. So we were really angry, as with the theme of our work. And what this same lady lets us lecture every year around this gender data gap within medicine. So one is cardiac symptoms. Another is the discrepancy of diagnosis of autoimmune conditions within women in comparison to men. Another part is my favorite thing to talk about is period pain, and how it really shows the masculinity of medicine and the feminization of pain. And then I also talk about the lithotomy position, which was adapted from one of King Louis of France's incredible pastimes of watching women give birth. So there's a lot there in that lecture. You can imagine the second year's blunder. There was one guy watching us give this lecture, especially about the lithotomy position. His jaw was on the floor. No way is the position we still use today adapted from that in modern medicine, where we say modern but Western medicine. The third one is something that Ritter and I are really, I think it's more close to our hearts. It's a panel talk we call The Elephant in the Room. Every year we ask our team members, so we kind of hand it down. So every year we recruit team members from a year below just to allow continuity and to ensure it's a student-led project. So every year we hand down this project, this part of it, so the students can look at current affairs in the NHS around intersectionality of identity and be able to present that as a panel talk from our own faculty members and members of the NHS, so clinicians, nurses, anyone in the MDT, so multidisciplinary team, who is able to talk to the students about their experiences. In the past, we've talked about mental health, the LGBTQIA community. We've talked about burnout. This year, we're going to be talking about it's about how doctors are moving abroad and the whole idea of the concept of the economic and the global market for doctors. So what that looks like and how that's going to impact the NHS. So we look at current affairs of that year, bring in faculty members, and it bridges the gap between faculty and students. So last year we had our head of assessments on that panel, and everyone's terrified of him. But Ritter and I know him as one of the loveliest guys in our faculty. And it was really nice for him to be very raw and vulnerable with the third year to talk about how difficult it is for him and his wife to manage childcare for their between himself and his wife. So that's where we're at right now. It's been 2 and a bit years. But I'm really grateful. We're in a really good place with it, and we're looking to work on tidying it and moving it to other universities. Because I definitely think that there is a space for us to really acknowledge that students, when they're young, they are not experiencing the professional environment as much as people would want it to be. We can't expect every 16-year-old to have a job and then have like the professional acumen you want them to at 18 years old. And through this, not only are we hoping to provide an insight to critical pedagogy. I love bell hooks. I've been grabbing her ideologies and her theories from, I think it's called Education to Transgress. There's transgressive definitely in there on the title of the book. But I've been telling the team, like, this is like literally the theory behind what we're doing. And empowering students to use their critical eye. We've had students come back to us and say, sometimes at the end of lectures, they'll go and do further reading because they want to read around it. Or while they're on placement, they now feel more comfortable to know that they can speak up when they feel uncomfortable about something and they know the university has their back. There's so much work left to do. There's a lot more to come. But I think that was the big project that came from Women in Healthcare, and we've made it our own. And it's nice because it's not part of QMUL Barcelona, London. It's our empowerment project. Sorry, that was a lot of
Honestly, it was really good. I'm going to try and break it down. But yeah, I think, some of the stuff that I think was really key is, like you mentioned, the whole like period pain thing, both from having sisters, but also from previous conversations we've literally had on the podcast about it. Like I know Brunel, they run a period at Brunel campaign about like making period products accessible and free in certain places on campus. Ideally, they'd love to do it everywhere, but they're just building it up. But yeah, like you said, there's a whole stigma around that and how it's perceived, and we could even probably do a whole episode on that and dive into that. But even, I think, like you said, like just what you're doing as a whole is really great because for two reasons. I think first off, like you said about the young people like not having that professional experience when they sort of like to expect an 18-year-old to act like, I guess, how a 24-year-old would act in a workplace. That's one of the reasons, as these guys know, I'm not, as well, I'm not a medical student. But even like from non-medical student point of view, even with placements that they do as a part of university degrees, the whole point of that is it's supposed to give students the access to know, like, when you graduate, this is how you need to act in interviews, or this is how you need to act in a workplace. And we've done loads of episodes on that. I've said that depending on what you want to do after you graduate, placements might be a good way to help you figure it out. But yeah, I think that, like you said, that's the really key thing, is it's having that space to learn, to know more about how I can like make sure I'm acting professional in the workplace, especially in something like medicine where like you have to sort of like you said, like you've got to like carry that image of you being a doctor. And you've already, like you said, there's a lot of complications of whether that's to do with a person's race, with their gender, to do with their age even. Like there's a lot of barriers that they can sort of come into, and having that level of professionalism. So people will always remember how you, it's a quote, people will remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So even like having that professionalism, like you said, is so key. And then I think the second thing is, like you said, about speaking to younger years about sort of like through the Environment Project, to speak to them about all the areas you mentioned. I think it's really good because I think as like literally at the Women's Networking event, we mentioned it there, and we've mentioned it on the podcast here as well, that when you don't necessarily, like when you go into a workspace, so like for example with me, if I go into a workspace or in any sort of situation, I will never know how a woman is going to get treated. In the same sense that if a white person comes up to me, they'll probably say they don't know how a black guy is going to get treated in certain situations. So I feel like having stuff like the Empowerment Project is really great because it means that, like you said, like even like the elephant in the room thing, having these open conversations where people can ask, like, I guess, questions that might seem uncomfortable, or you might feel like, can I ask it? Can I not? Because I feel like a lot of people have spoken about it anyways, but whether it's to do with like I said, like with race, with gender, that you can like asking questions is not an issue. Like feel free to, if someone's like not sure about something, doesn't know, like, I guess, like, what's okay and what's not, it's perfectly fine to ask questions. I think that's what people say the issue is like, if it's the way you do it. So like, if you're asking it as like a joke or you're making fun of it, that's not okay. But if you're asking to like learn more, like to get understanding about something, so like you said, like, so like as a male doctor or a male medical student could ask, like you said, like how female medical students have been treated during their time, whether it's to do with their placement or the time at university, just ask questions like that. Because like you said, there's that difference in experience, and being an active bystander, like you mentioned, so important. So yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, you're doing incredible work.
Thank you. No, I definitely agree with regards to what you're saying in terms of how when people have different, I say like the cards you've been given, I guess. So everyone's identity is like a set of cards they have in their hands, right? If your cards are different to someone else's, you can't, all you see is your own. There's no way I can ever pick up a card of yours that I don't have. It just doesn't work like that. The only way you can find out is ask it, right? It's like a game almost, but in that's like me really trivializing identity. But it's definitely like trying to ask and trying to find out. And through active bystander training, I think our whole aim is to allow students, not only in that group setting, but later on, anywhere in life, to question what they're seeing. You don't have to do anything in that moment, but you can definitely look at it and question it in your head. Because I feel like as a society, we're slowly leaning towards just take out and record it in the moment, rather than actually live in it, watch it, and make sure the person is okay. There have been so many times where I've seen someone collapse and everyone try and whip out their phone and take a picture, where myself or someone else is trying to drag the person to safety. And it's heartbreaking because we're becoming a lot more disenfranchised as people. And I think, as like you said, with the veil of doctor on top of someone's head, there's already a moral responsibility of entering that space. As an 18-year-old, you don't know that. You really don't appreciate that. Like, I think when I was 18, I had a gap year, so I had a year working, then I went to university. So my perspective on things were very different to maybe someone who didn't. But even then, I was genuinely a child. I did not understand me going on placement to GP on a Friday and seeing a patient talk about their pain in front of me, what that meant. It's only maybe last year I've actually had consultation where someone presents with, say, their mental health or a chronic illness, where you're able to sit there and actually empathize and see where they're coming from. And not only in that moment are you responsible for their welfare and livelihood, but you're responsible for your own and your team's as well. And the responsibility and the understanding of that moral responsibility in that moment, all those medical ethics and stuff really come into play in the everyday mundane. That's a lot for an 18-year-old. That's a lot to conceptualize. So little by little, active bystander training, gender data gap, that panel talk, when we initially did it, I was really worried they were tokenistic, but it's a start. And then I'm very grateful the university we're currently at, the faculty management are very keen on integrating this into our curriculum. So it's alongside anatomy, physiology, other stuff. So students have that ability to see the university not only as a hub for their support, but as a space where they can receive resources to be able to better their own skill set in terms of professionalism, communication skills, and so on. The topics as well that you mentioned, like specifically period pain, it's a really keen interest of mine. I've done a lot of research in it. And I think that it's one of the many things that we're still trying to reduce the patriarchal lens of medicine away from and provide a more gender-neutral approach to it, because you've got decades and centuries of a very specific, if any of your listeners know Foucault, he talks plenty about the medical hegemony and like how masculine the lens of the medical gaze is. We've had that for centuries in Western medicine. That's going to take another good couple of years to undo. So period pain, I think, because it's a certain type of reproductive organ that is associated with a certain group of people who menstruate, it is a starting point, but there's so much more to work on.
Yeah, definitely agree. But yeah, let's move on to the next thing. Because you mentioned, like I said, it's jumping around. You mentioned that you just finished your placement, right?
Yeah.
Could we know where you did it and how it went?
Yes. So at Bart's in our 4th year of medicine, we finished the specialities. So this year we've done anything to do with the brain and anything to do with the muscles and the bones. So like neurology, psychiatry, rheumatology, where you've got your autoimmune conditions, and then musculoskeletal problems. So anything with what bones, joints, muscles. Alongside that, and with the brain, I guess, you've got the ophthalmology, you've got dermatology. There's so much we've done this year. It actually boggles my mind. But then we also had obs and gynae. So lots of babies and women and people who menstruate, and lots of children in pediatrics. And then on top of that, we also had GP, which was my last placement. And that I'm very grateful that was my last one, because you can imagine all these specialities during the year get consolidated in 6 weeks of just general practice. And I was very, very grateful. I was at a really good practice with some GPs who are absolutely incredible at what they do. And they gave me a lot of autonomy over my patients. And although they were there to tidy you up and make sure you're doing things safely, it kind of solidified that in 8 months' time, it's over. This is now the real deal. This is how you are going to be trusted. In the future, when I am a doctor and I'm treating patients, it's no longer, can I do this? It's more so, I am doing this. And that change in grammar in itself is huge within the space of 1 year, because I took a year out before my 4th year. So coming back to medicine and being thrown into deep end in this way and ending it like that was a lot for 1 year. And that's the best way I can put it. It was a lot to decompress.
Yeah. It sounds like it was very beneficial and you learned a lot of life lessons from it.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the big things I learned was to take things one step at a time. Because of the high velocity of this academic year, you really couldn't think about next week. Because there were times in which I was at one hospital for 1 week, then I went to the World Cup in Qatar, and I came back and I was in a different hospital for 3 days. And then I had to move to a different city to go to a different hospital. And it, not only in terms of actual movement of me where I am geographically, but also the type of patients you're seeing, the things you're learning, what you're absorbing, and just trying to keep your head above the water. My best friend would always say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And being able to pace yourself throughout the year, that was so important, because I have the tendency to just leave things for the last minute, but this year I vowed to myself that I wouldn't. And I reaped the benefits of it towards exam season, where the burnout came out as an infection. Like I was coughing up my lungs during exam season. It wasn't great, but I still am on the remnants of it now. But I think the mental burnout wasn't as intense because I knew I did so much work during the year and I was in a good place to sit these exams. So yeah, there was a lot of lessons to learn as a whole. And I think each individual placement, particularly psychiatry, humbles you so much for your health and your well-being and the privilege of being able to live your day-to-day without help. Because you really, I always say to people who are studying medicine, you are so privileged. Because you see things day in, day out that the average person will not see. I say to people, I would say to my work friends, because I have a part-time job on the weekends. I was saying to my work friends, I did an assessment as like my final part of my placement on an actively manic bipolar patient who thought he was the ruler of the galaxy and Elon Musk owed him money. And I had to do a mental state exam on him. And they were like, and I was like, oh, this is not normal. This is not normal. Or other times I was doing my obs and gynae placement. I was very hands-on in cesareans to the point in which at some points they would let me bring the baby out and watch the cutting and help cut the umbilical cord. And I would go to work that weekend and my manager would say, so how many babies this week? And to me, that was so normal, but my co-workers were horrified. And it's one of those, again, it's a privilege to watch that. It's a privilege to watch the treatment of things as well. So yeah, a lot of humbling experiences.
It is, like you said, like, not even just like professional in general, like you said, like whatever you're doing to sort of see the privilege that can sort of come from that. So whether it's, you know, you get to work in an organization, whether you get to like even like you're saying for me, to know, which doesn't sound like amazing, but to know more about my university process, because both my placements for my undergraduate and masters were all within Brunel. So I ended up learning a lot about how things are done at my university, both from a sort of like communications and marketing and recruitment side of things, but also from, which is funny, a placement side of things, just figuring out like how placements are done, like what employers are looking for when they want students on placements and stuff like that. And like you said, like there's a lot that I've learned, whether it's to do with like CVs, how to write a good cover letter, how to like prepare the interviews, how to stand out interviews, and even like some of the like social stuff that I do. So like pick up mic and doing speeches and stuff like that. Like that stuff I have been able to develop and gain experience from the placements that I did. So I definitely agree. There is like a sense of like privilege and something that you can truly benefit from being in that space. And that's why I always say, like, when you're at university, just make the most of it. There's so many things that you can do to develop as an individual, both professionally, both personally, both like there's a whole range of stuff you can do to basically improve. Well, not necessarily improve, but to develop and discover more about yourself. And just not taking advantage of, I think, yeah, that would, at least for me, that would have been the worst thing from both, I guess, from my whole undergraduate and master's process of just, if I had left university and I'd felt like, actually, you know what, I've wasted like the last like 2 years of my life, I think that would have felt a lot worse. So yeah, I think, like you said, there's a lot of things that you just need to just like take advantage of while you're at university and to just maximize your overall experience.
100%. I think it's so scary to me because I've always been a busybody. And it's so scary to me, the idea of being at a place or a stage of a chapter of your life and not fully immerse yourself in that experience. But I feel like it also takes a certain type of person to put themselves out there. Because I assume the internships and all the placements that you had yourself, you had to put yourself out there for them. You had to apply for them. You had to put yourself in a position to actually want to do them, right? There will be people who will look at these journeys or look at other people who are very actively involved in things and think to themselves, oh, but why did I never know about that opportunity, or why did I never seek it? And it's a fine balance between a place not having enough opportunities and forcing people to create them in comparison to opportunities being there, but people not seeking them. And I understand everyone's circumstances are very different, so not everyone will find it as easy to put themselves out there. I'm currently mentoring some of the aspiring medical students at my previous high school, which is based in this borough. And I sat down with them. They're going into year 13, so they were year 12 when I first met them. And I sat there and I was like, okay, what do you want from me? I can literally help you go into medical school. How can I help you? And they all looked at me. They had no idea what to say to me. There were two who would not stop talking, which is great for that. But the other three were silent. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, you two stop. What about you guys? And two were very shy, but the third one hadn't even considered what help and opportunities they would like. And I think sometimes it's very important to have times of boredom and time to yourself, to just be quiet to yourself in your mind and think what you want. Because we're so lucky to live in this world, in this part of the world, especially for those who have families and support systems and networks that can support them, where they have the ease of mind to even think freely for themselves. I understand everyone's background is different, but when you do have that time to think to yourself and think about what you want, the rest is up to you to find it, right?
Definitely.
So I think that balance between opportunity and opportunity being created and opportunity being sought is very like it's a difficult thing to try and differentiate, but it definitely can be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like that's what, even like I've mentioned it before, that's one of the reasons why we started the podcast, the podcast network, because there is so much that students don't know about. And you know, I'm a student myself, so I getting like emails, like you get emailed loads of stuff when you're at university about like all this stuff, and sometimes you're just like, no, I don't want to check my emails. But whether it's stuff that's emailed or stuff that happens, there's so much that happens that students don't know about, or are a bit nervous. They don't really feel confident in like approaching people to ask them questions. And yeah, that's literally why like we do what we do, because we say that that students shouldn't miss out on stuff or like graduate and feel like actually my last 3 years, like, yeah, I had a good time socially, but I didn't really develop. Or, you know, I focused so much on academics, I didn't really get to have a social life at uni. And like you said, I get that there are circumstances that can hinder those experiences, whether it's professional or personal. Yeah, it's all about like maximizing your time at uni. It's a time that you probably don't want to repeat. So I just see it as, just think that no matter how hard it is or no matter how long it is, you're there for a specific time, and you don't want to, like with a job, I guess, like you wouldn't do a job and not necessarily, whether it's for personal development or you want to move, you're just doing that job to move to another place. Like you want to make sure that however long you're in an organization, you've developed yourself enough that when you do leave, you're not there. That's one of the things my dad always says is you don't want to enter somewhere and then leave like either the same level or worse than you came in at. You want to sort of go in and leave with like something. It doesn't even need to be like amazing, like, oh, I've got all these awards or qualifications. It can literally just be, you know what, I made like a really great friend, or, oh, you know, I've actually found out that I'm so passionate about this one particular thing, and I'm now going to explore like job opportunities there. So yeah, I think that's a really key thing to remember.
Definitely. I can't agree more. And it's frustrating sometimes when you watch, say, the other half of the people who see opportunities and they ignore it, and then the opportunity is taken or something develops as a result of it, and they sit in a very negative space. Where in reality, like, if you miss all, it's so cliche, but you miss all the shoots, you don't shoot.
Yeah.
No, sorry, you miss all the shots, you don't shoot. So it's a difficult one. I'll give a really good example of this. Our university, our medical school, in my opinion, if my faculty members of our uni ever see this, I am so sorry. But our uni is really good at communication skills teaching. I would hands down say our uni produces the most empathetic, understanding, good listening doctors I've seen in London. I've never come across a doctor or a consultant or anyone who heard Barts and be like, oh, they're a bit weird. It's always welcomed with warm arms. Oh, your students are so great at connecting with patients, proactive on placement, whatever. One thing we do lack, though, is opportunity for academia. You have other institutions like Imperial, UCL, that are very research heavy on the other extreme. I can't say how they teach their students. I have friends at the uni. It's complicated. But I know for a fact that there is definitely academic opportunity in those places because of the nature of that in the place. Barts in London is one of the oldest hospitals and medical schools in the country. So as a result, that aspect of being a doctor has always been, it's a culture that's embedded in the uni. The academic side of it is not so much because it's not been a university then a medical school, it's the other way around. So that's my understanding anyway, and the way I try and justify it in my head. So as a result, because I've always been, so my thing is I've always struggled between medicine and English when I was deciding for university and medical school. So I found a nice in between in anthropology. So when I took the year out and did the master's in anthropology, it was like my inner child was screaming with joy because it was books, articles, reading all the time. Anyone asked me, how did you interplay to you? I was like, all I did was read. It was incredible and write essays. And then when I came back, the dissertation I did, I learned from my master's dissertation, I learned from the mistakes I made. And I took the feedback on the chin. I didn't do that well in it. I took the feedback on the chin. I appreciate I rushed it. And I appreciate I could have done more. Took that. And then I did my dissertation on something I'm very passionate on. It's period pain and experiences of women who have been managed for their period pain by a medical institution or they haven't been. I've used that experience and I went to one of my favorite people from the university who's a clinical psychologist. I said, hi, can you supervise me? You don't really need much help, but I need you to mark this. She said, yeah, sure. I did something similar for my master, so I know some of the background on this. Do this type of analysis, go and do your thing. That's what I did. I used the knowledge I had and knew the experience I had. And I was like, I have created this opportunity for myself. I can either repeat the mistakes I made, or I can put heart and soul into this. And that's why I chose. Reap the rewards from it. LinkedIn's going crazy when that is. But I did reap the rewards from it. It got published. It got presented at an international congress. And it's going to be at 2 or 3 other ones as well. And as a result of it, I've created a lobby group for period pain. And I've created a research group. And I'm in the process of interviewing people who want to do research. So it's a very interesting cycle going from innovating something for yourself. And then as a result of that innovation, you can choose, do you want to stop there? Or do you want to develop that further? And then what's so nice in the development process is the humbling notion of, I can't do this on my own. I think I need people to help. So it's been so fun interviewing people. There was a first year, bless her. I don't think she'll mind me mentioning this because it'll be anonymous, I guess. She'll know I'm talking about her, but I don't think others will. But she's in her first year. She's going into her second year. The only experience of writing she has is her EPQ. So that extended quality project and quantity. It's the essay that you write in year 12, right? I wrote mine. I did what did you do? Well, I really. She did hers in London for the treatment. But when we were talking about it, she was so funny. She was like, it was during COVID. And she didn't realize that you didn't need to use actual like clinical trials, meta-analyses and stuff like that. So while we were all using Google, she was using PubMed. And she got full marks. So we were talking about it in that interview, and in my head, I'm like, I need you in my life. I need you on this project. And then I must have mentioned to her, I was like, have you ever considered trying to get it published because you've done a high-quality piece of work? And it's that sparkle in the eye of, I never considered that. And I feel like when you're as a person who's able to innovate for themselves, I feel like this just might be my guilty conscience and my upbringing. I feel like you have a responsibility to provide that for others. You have to teach others if you know know something and there's a lack of, say, women in research, especially in period pain, or women in public health campaigns surrounding stuff like this, why not bring as you climb? So in that moment, I was like, I know this is a very simple thing to do. Why not allow you to have that opportunity as well? And I think the sad thing is that shouldn't be my responsibility to an extent as a student. If I was a doctor who was able to supervise these students, yes. But again, I'm grateful to my supervisor supervising me, supervising them until I'm able to, not in the nicest way possible, not need to run anymore. So there's a part of me that wished my uni provided more academic experience to students. So students wouldn't have to scramble for like these sort of things. Rather, it could be something that's more open-ended and offered to anyone who wanted it.
Mental health is really important to us at Pick Up the Mic, and we love to share resources that can support your mental health. And that's why we are so glad to have today's sponsor. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. BetterHelp is the world's largest therapy service, and it's 100% online. With BetterHelp, you can tap into a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists who can help you with a wide range of issues. To get you started, you just answer a few questions about your needs and preferences in therapy. That way, BetterHelp can match you with the right therapist from their network. Then you can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. You can message your therapist at any time and schedule live appointments when it's convenient for you. If your therapist isn't right for any reason, you can switch to a new therapist at no additional charge. With BetterHelp, you get the same professionalism and quality you expect from in-office therapy, but with a therapist who is custom-picked for you, more scheduling flexibility, and at an affordable price. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/pickupthemic. I've also linked them down below in the description. So again, that's betterhelp.com/pickupthemic, MIC, and start your journey today. Yeah, and I get that. And I think, like you said there at the end about like just providing, like, if you've got a skill or something, you're not supposed to just like keep it to yourself. You're supposed to like give it to others. But I think that's so true because I wouldn't say it's like a bad thing. I think it's like a fair thing to say because whether it's like you're doing it as a project, as a business or whatever, like a lot of people, well, I say a lot, so there's a lot of billionaires that but I guess the whole thing is like there's a lot of like you give back to your community, and I think especially like you said with certain like roots in their upbringings, like you're just instilled from a young age, like no matter how far you go or you get, like there's a community that helps you to get there, and you shouldn't like it's not like a guilt, like you said, like a guilty conscience thing of like, oh, you know, these people helped you, so you have to like whether it's give them money or like shout them out or whatever. But it's just remembering that like you didn't get there by your own actions. You got there through the actions of others. And yeah, it's out now. And my family have humbled me enough so I can say it without like, it sounded like a brag. But like, so for example, at my graduation, I did speech. And I literally mentioned that I mentioned my family, my upbringing, and like the businesses that my family and I have set up because, and like even my friends, the team, like stuff like that. Like I always tell people that I like pick up the mic or whatever I do. It's not, I didn't get there by myself. I didn't get to like a stage of even like that speech, like to do it. It wasn't that I just, you know, like I did it myself. I didn't like get any advice or any feedback. No, I did. And like, if without people's feedback on like when to pause or like when to make jokes or like what's good and what's not, it wouldn't have gone as well as it did. And even with the speech, like I said, of mentioning family and friends, I mention them because they do incredible work. And to me, I'm like, if I'm getting a spotlight, then my friends and my family are going to get a shout out as well because it's not even like I did it for them, so they have to do it for me. It's like, I know how much time, like whether it's my family, like have helped me with my degree or whether it's even like with friends, like how much they've helped with, whether it's pick up the mic, whether it's sharing stuff, doing interviews, like advising people to be like recommending people to the podcast, being on the podcast, like whatever. Yeah. I've said like, I couldn't do any of that without them. And even like you said about like, there's always a point when you realize you need a team. Like I knew, like when we started, I was like, I could do this myself, but I prefer to have a team. And even now, like I've said, like, I'm always happy for people to come to the team. And it's all about life. If people want to come in and like, they can only do like, I don't know, like a short period of time, a couple months. I'm like, cool, come on the team, just do the work. And then like, just make the most of it. And if they want to go, then I'm like, that's perfectly fine. At this point, I'm not paying them. So I'm like, it's perfectly fine. But yeah, I always say like, it's an opportunity for them to develop themselves. So yeah, I think like you said, it's just natural. It's just natural to want to uplift people.
100%. And I think one person I always think of when I speak about this sort of stuff, or I think about this sort of stuff, is the owner of Nasty Gal. God, her name. There's a really nice series on Netflix about her called Girl Boss. Hilarious woman. She was on Stephen Bartlett's podcast, and that's how I found out about her. And her development of Nasty Gal, the business, like the brand. Initially, she found it so hard to transition from eBay, where she would resell vintage items, to a website and her own brand, was because of this reason. Like, she found it so difficult to give away her baby and ask for help. And I think it's so important in moments where you're trying to expand, think expansively and grow, to really understand that you can't do it on your own. You're going to need people who are not only willing to help, like he said, for a short period of time and give what they can and go, but also people who know so much more than you and are so much more knowledgeable about the field you are. Because like you said, they are your guiding lights initially. And they are the people who kind of show you, hold the mirror up and say, okay, this is something that you need to figure out. And her story kind of, I've always been big on big teams. Like Women in Healthcare was a committee of 32 women. They were led by the 4 of us. Like it was always a big ship. And I love the big ship mentality of working all together to go in the same direction and destination. But sometimes I feel like when I see people try to expand, there's this hesitancy of it's like my baby. I don't want to give it away. Whereas even children, it takes a village. So I really hear what you're saying, and I hope when if people listen to this, they do want to expand something, they want to delegate, and they want to make sure that the work is being done, but they have the creative autonomy to have time. And there's so much in leadership that people constantly talk about leading others, but there's little spoken about leading yourself. And I think when you are able to sit with yourself and delegate and give a part of you and what you're doing away, you get left so much of you behind, and you're able to then give yourself space to, again, have that creative space to think. And that's one thing I've learned to value so much more as the year or two has gone on with these different projects.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the reasons why for the other podcast that my brother and our co-host Morgan does, like we said about like giving them control, because Morgan and my brother Joshua didn't know each other. Morgan was someone that I met when I was on placement, and then it turned out he was a friend of a member of the team. So it's literally just funny. Like when he found out we were a podcast, we were just like, let's do an episode together. And then he mentioned that he was like really massive on Game of Thrones. And I was like, oh, well, my brother's like a big Game of Thrones fan as well. And he said, oh, I'm always looking to like start a podcast. Like I'd love to do podcasting. And I was like, hey, look, my brother, like he's been on a few podcast episodes. He knows what we do. I was like, do you want to do like a podcast episode with him about Game of Thrones? And then they started out doing it. And then like you said, like I was there, I'd like watch it, I'd be in the room. I wouldn't necessarily say anything, but because they were doing online, I'd just like join on Zoom and then just listen to it while they were speaking. But now it's at a point where I just leave them to do it. I don't like, if I think there's something that they should talk about, I'll recommend it to them. But they record it. The only thing I do is just edit the episode, but they record, they come up with titles, they come up with topics, they find guests all by themselves. And I've said that, like what you were saying before, there's so much that I can do to pick up the mic. There's so much that I've got like planned and stuff, but I also know that like I will basically, and it's happened, like you said before about like you don't realize until like you're like, we're coughing, but I was like ill. And it was one of those things where my dad was just like, like you're just, my whole family was just like, you're like pushing yourself so much. And I was like, oh no, it's just a grind, it's the hustle. You just gotta like keep working hard, and then it's all gonna pop off. And then now I just realized like, no, like, I cannot, like, if I keep doing it, I generally will just like collapse because you can't do everything. So yeah, like you said, like just being like just giving things away, like you don't necessarily, or even like waiting to do stuff, because you can have all these ideas, you can have all these plans, but like you said, whether it's you have to wait for your team to build up, whether it's you need to just wait for the right person to work with. Because there's, like I said, there's a lot that I've got planned to pick up on mic. There's a lot that I've been wanting to do for a long time. But I also know if I try and do it with everything that I've currently got now, that it either won't work or everyone else might enjoy it. But I'm just going to sit there and just be like, I'm so tired, or like, I'm really ill, and I just would prefer to just be at home. So I definitely agree. It's just that whole idea of just like taking it one day at a time and just doing it slowly, step by step.
That's so interesting that you mentioned the waiting for ideas, because that's something I'm working on. Oh Lord, I cannot wait. I can't, like, if I have an idea bubbling in my head, my poor friends will have to hear it in that moment right away. Even if I can't do it, I don't know what it is. My poor journal has got all my ideas in it, because it's one of those things, like you said, you have to wait sometimes. I know there's such a big thing now going around in the entrepreneur community, but then I just do it. Just shoot. No, don't just do it. You don't want to ever put yourself in a position of detriment. Sometimes, if you never shoot, you never know. Fine. But other times where you genuinely don't have the capacity to, say, for example, right, You want to host an event for 1,000 people. Okay, this is a genuine example. I founded an Iranian Women's Federation because I found through a therapy session, I found out there's a big part of the Iranian women's identity, especially with everything going on right now in Iran, that is a shared trauma. No matter what the generation, no matter what the religious belief, no matter what, there is a shared sense of shame and trauma within the Iranian women's community. Now, the extent, I can't speak for all of them, but the extent to which that exists, in what capacity, is it identity politics, is it religious trauma, what there is, I don't know. But from my understanding of it and from my understanding of the history of women in that country, there has always, whenever you talk to them, there is always that understanding that there is this need to share that. And it doesn't have to be verbal, but it can be a communal space. So I reached out to a friend and all that, do you want to do this? Sure, let's do it. And we did the launch event. It was a brunch event. It was great. About 30 people came. Women from the age of 18 to mid-50s. Such a great mix of age groups. And everyone mixed so well. Everyone talked so much with each other. It wasn't a networking event in the traditional sense of trying to put yourself out there. It was to find a community. And again, love me bell hooks. Communal love is one of the most important loves that exists. So as a result of that event, we were like, okay, let's do another one. So we're going to have a picnic towards the end of August, I hope. But there's another event we want to do, which is going to be an arts night. So art is a huge part of culture, poetry, music, dance. It's big. Like me in the car listening to my music is a part of my identity. Words can't express how much Iranian music means to me. Same with other people with their poetry, their music, their art, whatever it may be. So initially I was like, okay, let's hire out the barbecue. And the way my team humbled me, they were like, Parmis, we don't even have 100 followers on Instagram. How are we going to hire out the barbecue? And I was like, that's very fair. But it's exactly what you said. You might have big ideas for things and you want to achieve things and it's so exciting. We're now going to hire out the side of a pub, which is a theatre, humble size of 30 to 40 people, and it's a starting point. We will get to barbecue and stuff like that. But they did the right thing of say, Parmis, no. Not yet. And it's that important word yet. It will come one day and the time will come. And that's what I have to keep reminding myself. So it's really interesting that you also mentioned it as well.
No, I definitely agree. And it's just, like we were saying, like, there are podcasts that I've been wanting to launch. Like, even, like, there's podcasts I want to launch, but even bringing it back to, like, the Pick Up the Mic's past, like, it started off as just one podcast, and now we're, like, a network with 10 podcasts under 4 different topic areas. And, like what you said, like, at the start, I was like, oh, yeah, we should do, like, stuff on gaming and stuff on, like, comics and stuff on, like, fun stuff and all this. And even, like, to the point where I was just like, we pick up, I'm like, I have to have, like, one episode of this podcast coming out every week. And now, like we said, I've, like, when I was trying to do, like, 3 or 4 recordings in a week, whether it was online or in person or mixed, like, I was just, like, running around. I was, like, tired. I was exhausted. Whereas now I've said, okay, cool. At least 2 episodes of any Pick Up the Mic content will come out each week. And people can expect it in, like, whichever format it comes up, or like whatever podcast it's under, they're going to get 2 episodes. But it means that now I just know, okay, cool, I need to at least record one thing a week. If I can't record something, then I need to figure out how can I, like, work around it to make sure, like, there's something, at least some form of content coming out that week. But yeah, I think, like what you said, it's just like easing yourself. Don't put so much pressure on yourself to do stuff. I think like what you were saying, there is, I think especially now that as a young person, you're always trying to think of like a hustle, or like you're trying to do something, whether it might necessarily be like your dream to start a business, but you're thinking of like, I've got a hustle in mind that I want to do alongside like your degree or alongside your full-time job. And I just feel like we said, like, there's a lot of this thing of just like, oh yeah, if you've got a business or you've got this, just do it, just do this. And like we said, I think it's good to dream big. Like I said, there are dreams that I've got to pick up the mic, like hosting a gaming award would be the dream, or hosting doing interviews at premieres, going to premieres, hosting awards. That would be the dream. But I know also like I'm gonna have to build up to that. I guess the nice way to sum it up would be for me is you just have to be ready for it when it comes. I've been in the middle of like I will probably do an episode of probably Mike Unplugged, about the graduation speech. But I know a lot of people ask me like, where did it come from? How did you do it? And the easy way to sum it up is I just knew I wanted to do a speech. And I was like, in America, you see all these valedictorians, you see all these like celebrities get invited and they do like a speech. And I was like, I would love to do that. Now, in my head, I wasn't even thinking I'd be doing it at my own graduation. I thought maybe, I'll be able to pick up the mic, they'll invite me back, I can do it. So I was just like, I'll give myself a year. But there was one day that I was on the Metropolitan Line train. It wasn't delayed. And I was like, what? I've got nothing else to do. Let me just write out what I would, like, if I was asked to do a speech, what I would talk about.
Okay.
I did. I was just like typing away on my phone. And then, it was just by chance that, I asked someone like, I know graduation's around the corner and they usually get people to speak. Could I speak at graduation? Like, is this something that could happen? And then the person inquired, and they got back, said, you just have to fill in an application form, just fill it out. So as soon as they did it, I was like, cool, I've got my speech ready. I sent it over. They gave me some corrections to do. So I made some corrections. But what I said and what I originally wrote, there isn't that, it's just like cutting out small bits to keep it to time, but there wasn't that much of a difference. And with that, I just always, like, my main takeaway from that was just, I've just got to be ready. Because I feel like, especially from like a Christian point of view, like for me, it seems like almost every year there's like something I've learned about myself, like something like a lesson that I've learned throughout the year. So for me, I think last year, the key takeaway for was it last year? Yeah, it was last year. Sorry. I think the key takeaway for me was that I shouldn't be upset when things don't go my way because there's something else that could come. So it was like different things of like job applications I was applying for, even like the job that I'm currently in wasn't the first job that I applied to do an interview for. Like there were awards I was applying for picking up the mic, that I was trying to get funding to raise funds for stuff. Didn't get it. Then this other opportunity would come, or like something else would come out of nowhere, and I would be like, let's try it, let's see how it goes, and then it worked. This year, I was thinking, same thing, let's just focus on that. But for me, I think my main takeaway, at least for so far what's happened in the year, is just be ready for whatever happens. So there have been a few times that I've been somewhere and people have been like, oh, could you quickly just do something? So whether it was being ready to do the graduation speech, there was a talk at Red Bull that I did, and it was literally just because, it was
amazing.
Wasn't planned. The university went to Red Bull, and the person who was supposed to speak was sick. And they were just like, oh, we'll just let people just sit down, have some pizzas, and just relax. And I was like, oh, well, if you need someone to do a talk, I can come up. So I can say something. I was like, I've got my laptop. I can whip up something to just put in the background and to play, so it can sort of seem a bit professional, it's prepared and stuff. So literally doing that wasn't something that I, if you told me a week before I was going to do it, I'd be like, nope, I have no idea what you're talking about. But I think this year's just been be ready for whatever, because you never know when you might get called to do stuff. I'm not saying that that's the same for everyone. It might be different for you, but I would say, that whole thing I was saying was that just always be ready for something. So if you want to start a business and you want to be invited to Shark Tank or get invited to a award show or whatever, then just be ready for it. So whether it's, you start doing smaller things at university so you can build up there. And just building up that experience. I think is the key takeaway. I think that's what you want to show people, and people will always be grateful that, this person's been ready for it. So even like you're saying with the Barbican, the stuff that you're doing now, when you approach them, they'll be like, oh, okay, you've got this covered. You know what you're doing. We don't need to give you advice. You've managed loads of events before. I think that's honestly, like you said, it's just always taking these opportunities that even to yourself or to others might seem it's small, it's not anything big. it's something that you can eventually grow. Which you'll hopefully see something because I need to announce it at some point. But yeah, like even our next networking event, like it's the same thing of like, I didn't think we would be doing one or another one this year, but it's something that I'm looking to do because of how well the last one went. So I definitely recommend. I definitely agree. I think just always being ready, being open to spaces. We do. Yeah, I've said it. We do have an entrepreneurship podcast coming. We're just sorting out all the dates and stuff because life's been a bit hectic. But yeah, we will have an episode soon. But yeah, I think entrepreneurship is definitely becoming such a key part of everyone's life. Because I think also, and I guess it's the last thing because I know I've been talking for a while now. I think it's just like people have realized I don't want to do a 9 to 5 or people realize either one, they don't want to do a 9 to 5 for them, or people realize like there's so much that could be done and is not being done that they want to create that. There was this really interesting talk that I heard that was done by an Imperial alumni. And I think he's got a podcast episode, so I'll include the link to it down below. But he was saying his business is about prosthetics. And he said that his whole idea just came from his final year project. He's a design student, so he designed it for his final year project. And then just thought, why not? Like, there's nothing on it like in the market. Why can't I try and make this business? And his biggest advice was, he was saying there are so many students, not even just design students, but like you're saying about like whether it's you're like a science student, like science is broad, but all the sciences, like, or even any student that does a dissertation, and like you're saying, you're doing like your research or the topic you're into is so impactful. And he said there's so much research, so much development that's done that it's just like, okay, cool. The student submitted it. All it's gonna do, like, it's all done. It's going in a drawer. That's it. Great. On to the next one. It was like, there's so many businesses or like so much research or so many like innovative things that are done by students that they just leave at the door, or they're just like, you know what? It was for my dissertation. I enjoyed it, but it was long. I don't want to do it anymore. And just leave it there. And he was just like, no, you could, like, whether you want to make a business, whether you want to submit a research paper, like, there's so much work that you do. And like you said, like, all this research, all this like dedication and stuff, the time you put towards it. And if you know that people are saying, oh, wow, like, this isn't something that I knew about, or this isn't something that, there's a lot of research in, then yeah, go and just get it submitted as a research paper, or go and start a business based on something you've designed. Because I think there's so many opportunities that it's missed. And then you might see, I don't know, like whether it's a business or research, that something comes out later based on like similar to what you've done, but they've done it the wrong way. So it's not handled the right way, or it's not spoken about in the right way, or it's not like the product isn't a good product. And you're just like, oh, I literally made this for my project. Or I literally researched this, and this is completely the wrong way to like promote it or to advertise it or to do whatever. So yeah, I feel like that's my main takeaway, that like, even if you're interested in business or you're looking to submit research, there's so much work that you do that you're just like, I don't want to touch it again. Oh, yeah.
So it's really interesting you say this. But before I touch on it, first of all, congratulations on all your achievements. Thank you. And I really hope you don't put too much of it down to spontaneity. There's a reason why they said yes to you, so you should be incredibly proud of yourself by achieving that. It's a bit Red Bull. Come on. It's big. So no, props to you. Regarding what you're saying in terms of wasted talent, so to say, one thing I've been yapping on, I love my cliches, I've been yapping on all year is rejection's redirection. And if I didn't have that moment of off with my master's dissertation, that could have gone one or two ways. And I genuinely feel like when products are left for the sake of doing them and they're not touched again, that's a mindset thing. It very much is a mindset of, I did this for the sake of this, not for the sake of expanding it. And I think this brings me back always to the Rockefeller Foundation and the reasons why, using the like conspiracy reason of why universities are created. And I think the reason why it's considered a conspiracy is because some people might I do believe in the idea of the Rockefeller Foundation of providing workers for society through university and degrees. But to an extent, I think it's so important to also remember that education is literally the passport to your future sometimes. not always. People have a degree and never use it and achieve amazing things. I've known so many people who have got law degrees and never used it in their lives, but have used the skills from said degree to develop themselves in a different industry. You use skills within the medical field to become investment bankers. How? I don't know. I find out. But it's definitely a mindset of, in that moment, when you look at the work you've done, do you see it as solely something that can be used in that moment for the sake of that thing? It can be dissertation project, anything at university. Is it just for that? Or can you use it for later on? Can it be used for something else? But one other thing that's really important that I hope students will always remember, what you do at university, what you specialize at university, what you do disto in at university does not define you. What defines you is what you do as a result of it. So, for example, I don't know if I want to go into women's health. Sounds crazy, but I don't know. I love the skin. I love psychiatry. And it's having that ability to, again, sit with yourself and be very honest with yourself and say, I'm working so hard on this project. Am I okay to one day up and leave it forever and not want to do this? And it took me a while to actually say to myself, yes, because the reason I'm doing this, partly anything you do is personal gain, right? In any shape or form. But pardon me, this isn't for the sake of my career. This is sake of my community, the people who menstruate. So no, I don't mind if this one day doesn't end up being a part of my core application for anything. If I want to specialize in down the line, hell, I might want to be a GP, but this is still applicable. You never know. But what I learn from this experience and what I take away from the experience, the skills I learn, not only in terms, so specifically for research or teaching how to do research methods, that can take me anywhere. The skill itself is not defined by what you do, the title of what you do either. So I feel like I can see that being a barrier for students saying, oh, I created this probe in my engineering masters, but I don't want to work in NASA, so I'm just going to leave this here. Patented. You know, who knows? That doesn't mean this defines the work you do. Yes, redefinition and what's the word that everyone uses nowadays? Rebranding. Rebranding yourself is hard, but if it genuinely isn't something you want to tie yourself to, no one's going to stop you. Again, with this, because you know, when you were saying everyone has a hustle alongside what you say and what they do, that's like their core thing. I envy our boomers who didn't have to do that. Their economy didn't need that, essentially. The economy was just forming. And now in this Cosy Lives, we are all considering, okay, alongside what we're doing today, what are X, Y, Z things we're also going to do in order to finance the lives we had pre-pandemic. And I think with all of everything we've said in mind, I think one thing I really want people to know is that rejection or any sort of disappointment, anything like that comes your way, it's redirection. It's showing you that this thing might not be for you right now. So it's a matter of taking the lesson, because there's been a couple of interviews, one particular recently, that I thought I was going to get, like the opportunity or the course. And I'm very grateful. At the end of it, I asked the gentleman interviewing me, a profound profile in the medical community. I'm so surprised that I even had the audacity to ask this. I was like, do you have any feedback for me at the end of the interview? And he was like, you know what, Pops, I'm not going to mess you around. I don't think you're ready. And it was so interesting. I didn't get offended, did not get upset, listened to him and agreed. Because based on the stuff he said to me, they were things I needed to work on, and I knew I needed to work on. And it was affirming of that. I told my best friend when I left the cafe, and she got so angry for me. She was like, how dare he? Like, he went in with the mindset of rejecting you, da-da-da-da. I was like, girl, no, calm down. It's redirection. Something better will come my way. But this is very important feedback, because I clearly am not in the place I thought I would have been in order to get on this program. And that program is not defining of me, my value, or my self-worth. We go again next year or the year after. Or never again. This program is not a definition of my value. And I think regarding what you said about things being started and not continued, whether or not you see that as a failure, a mishap or whatever, you really need to take that and really reflect on that and see what your perspective is on it.
Yeah, definitely. And even like you mentioned there about like applying stuff and maybe never going back. I think the greatest example I find about that is the person who, you know, the Ring bell, like with the camera. It's like, I don't know if it's called Ring, the company, but it's basically this guy, this American.
Is that the thingy, the one of the...
Yeah, on the wall, yeah. So that guy, he went on Shark Tank. He like came up with this idea. He approached them and spoke about it. And they literally were just like... So I think most of the sharks said no, because they were just like, it's not going to work. It doesn't make sense. Like, why would people want it? And then I think one of the sharks asked for a lot of equity of his company. And he was like, you know what? I'm good. Like, I'm going to walk away. And then I think like what you said, a lot of people probably when they watched the episode was like, oh, this guy's like another failure. You know, he's not going to do anything with it. What's really interesting is he then approached the idea again. I think I don't know how he approached Richard Branson, but he spoke to Richard Branson about the idea. Loved it. He offered funding towards it. I think he wanted a lot less equity towards the company. And then what was really interesting is that Ring then obviously like people know now, it popped off, it got a lot of money. I think he ended up selling the company to Amazon for over $1 billion. He's either over, maybe $1 million. I don't know if it was $1 billion, but sort of a lot of money. And then what was really interesting is he then was invited to the same sharks that rejected him, invited him to Shark Tank. And what I really liked that someone said was on the episode that he was on, for a lot of the businesses that people were just like, I don't see it, I don't really get what they're doing. He then was just like, you know what, I'm going to offer you some funding. I'm going to give you guys a chance. And I think for me, what I really like about that is two things. So one, he realized, I always said before about community. So he realized other people have been through what he's been through and was just like, you know, I see how it could work. I'm going to offer them a chance. But then also, I like that he was humbled with it. So it wasn't that he came back on and was just like, you know, or like he even said no and then did like a video. Like, I know that a lot of people that would do that. I'd be like, I can't believe these guys invited me. They rejected me. Now they just want to profit off me. I mean, it wasn't even like he then said, oh, like he went on the show and was just like making snide comments or like was making fun of them. Like he was like, no, like you didn't believe in me. Cool. You know, I appreciate the stuff that you said. But at the end of the day, he was just like, you know what, I'm passionate about what I'm doing. And I know there's someone that needs it. And I've always said that whatever you do, always just see it as like, there's one person that needs, whether it's the product or the service you're offering. There's one person, even if it's research, there's one person that needs whatever you can provide. And when you see it as that, and you don't see it as like putting pressure on yourself and like, oh, I'm trying to like bring in millions, or I'm trying to get like loads of big brands to sponsor me or whatever. You just see it as, you know, there's one person that could benefit from the advice that I'm giving. And you'll then realize that the way you even act or the way you talk or the way you conduct business is in a different mindset, because you're not trying to make millions. You're not trying to like hustle. You're genuinely just like, no, I'm here to support someone, or here to help someone to not go, whether it's through something you went through or something your friends or your family went through. You want to help someone else. And that mindset to me is so impactful that you'll just realize, actually, you know, my life would be completely different if it wasn't that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's been a lot. Yeah, we still had like no idea of how this would go. And we also did say like we didn't expect entrepreneurship.
No.
So yeah, it's unfiltered. But no, thank you, wonderful audience, to come back, and thank you, Parmis.
For having me.
No, it was honestly, like I said, really great. I really benefited from the conversation. I think there's a lot our audience could learn from. There's a lot I learned. Very, very welcome. As always, if our audience is interested in getting in touch, maybe they want to see some of your LinkedIn achievements as well, what's the best way for them to do that?
I say the easiest way to reach out to me is LinkedIn. If they want my LinkedIn, feel free to provide that to them. I think that is the main.
Cool, perfect. And yeah, thank you again to you, our wonderful audience, for coming back. Like this episode, like, comment, subscribe is always appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss the episode, make sure you click the bell at the bottom of the video so you can find out more. Well, you can be notified when the next video of Pick Up the Mic comes out. And then I completely forgot to do this for the last episode, but yes, we have a feedback form that we're going to be putting at the bottom of our videos. So if you can let us know like how you're finding the stuff we're doing. Like I said, there are a few things. I know I've promised episodes of a lot of stuff and events. They are coming. Like I said, life has just been a bit busy at the moment, but when it eases up, I will confirm everything and let you guys know more. And then finally, if you want to support the podcast, you want to sponsor us, you want to help us financially, then please do check out either our Patreon page, which is linked down below, as well as our YouTube membership, which is also linked down below. You can do both. If you're listening to this episode, you can also do Buzzsprout. If you're listening to it through Buzzsprout, you can do it through there. There's loads of ways you can sponsor and support the podcast, but whichever way you're comfortable with, it's less... That's a lie. It's less than a McDonald's big meal.